Shalom, friends! Welcome to Orange Socks, a podcast celebrating Jewish creativity. I'm your host, Yitzchak Moully, inviting you to join me in exploring the soul of Jewish expression. Shalom, friends. Welcome to the Orange Socks podcast. And I am not in the studio, but we'll get to that in a moment. I'm here with a dear friend, a fellow rabbi, creative, Rabbi Yakov Raskin. Yakov, welcome.
Hi, good evening. Nice to sit down for a chat. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is we do Zoom, but we do like video sharing. You're busy video sharing your screen, so it's good to almost see you in person.
This is the biggest I've seen your face in a while.
There you go. So I know Yakov. I forget who introduced us, but for a number of years now, Yakov has been my go-to person for renderings of all my wild and wonderful ideas that don't exist yet, and even some ideas that are not fully fleshed out. Yaakov's been incredible with helping me, visualize some concepts that are in my head. So I'm sitting in my living room because, as you can see through the window, I'm super proud of this beautiful public art menorah that is in the flesh. It's really out there. On my front lawn. It's sold. It's on its way to a client. It's shipping out Monday, and I took it home for a victory lap, I suppose. So, Yaakov, have you seen this in person yet? There's 8 of them out there, or have you still only seen them in renderings?
I have only seen them in renderings and the occasional picture of them being installed. I saw the videos of you installing one recently, 2 actually, in one location. That was very cool to see. The idea that we had spent so many hours and hours on working and finessing the concept to see it actually coming to life, at least in a video, was really exciting. I'm looking forward to the day where I could see one in person, but I have not done that yet.
So, just recently you moved out to Wyoming, is that right? You're now a Chabad shliach in somewhere Wyoming?
That's correct. Yes, we're almost reaching our second year anniversary of being on shlichus over here. We're in a place called Laramie, Wyoming. Don't worry, I hadn't heard of it either before we moved out here. And so Laramie is the single university in the state is based over here. We also have about 45 minutes away is Cheyenne, which is the state capital. And so there's the political elements over there and the military. And so part of our responsibility is, so we're splitting our time between lots of different things, including many of the things that we'll discuss here, as well as the political and university and communities in these various places. So, Baruch Hashem, pretty busy.
Trying to get to that. There's a lot going on, and we'll unpack some of that. But so I'm saying maybe you just have to get the state capital to buy one of these if you want to see it in person.
I'd love to get the state capital to buy one and the university to buy another. Or several.
I'm there we go. I like the way you think.
Yeah.
So, video rendering of what you do, of taking concepts, ideas, napkin drawings, and turning them to life, digitally. How'd that come about? Because it's very creative and yet it's very technical. What's the history? How'd you end up doing what you're doing?
I like to live. I find I'm often right at the edge, like you say, of the creative and the technical. A lot of what I do is a very strong mixture of the two, and I enjoy both of them. So it's nice to be always balancing the two. I got interested in 3D as a teenager, as a young teen. I grew up in a home with a strong sense of trying to use our time the best we can. And partly as a result of that, we grew up with a computer, access to a computer, and no games on the computer, no videos, and no internet, or very limited internet. So I was always, whenever I was using the computer, I had to figure out a better use of my time than just kind of browsing or playing games. And at some point, I found out about this idea of 3D rendering, and it caught my interest. It was around the time when I had just done a bunch of PowerPoint slideshows of trying to do the Kalim of the Mishkan, because our teacher at the time had inspired us, and I got very excited about the Mishkan. So I made something in PowerPoint, and then I heard about there is this thing of 3D. So in the sixth grade, or class 7, because I grew up in London, so I built a model of the Mishkan, followed by a model of the Beis Hamikdash. And I always playing around with 3D as well as other software and other graphic programs. Then once I got to yeshiva, I kind of left it all behind. For most of my years of yeshiva, I had very little internet, very little computer access, and focused on learning. And then towards the end of smicha, like when I was finishing that whole process of and getting ready to graduate, someone had mentioned something and kind of reignited that passion. So I got back into it as a hobby for a couple of years, and then once I got married, I was in Kotel and starting to look at ways of making a parnasa. This came up as as something that can actually make some real money. So it's been a way of tapping that creative itch as well as a way of paying the bills throughout. And even early on, I was always interested in this idea that one of the things that attracted me to it is that I don't need a degree, and as long as you could produce good work, that's all you need. And as well as the fact that it can be done remotely means that I could do something like this, where I'm living in Wyoming and working for people all over the world. And even before Zoom was an idea, it was a concept. This idea of being able to work remotely was very attractive in order to be able to fund a shlichus from work that is that's done remotely and at high level.
Super interesting. What years was it when you first started? I mean, computers. How advanced were computers at the time?
We'd hand cranked it. No. Let's see. I was in so probably around 2007, 2008 is when I started getting into it. The program I started with, and I still use to this day, as by now it's just one of many softwares I use, but the one I start most projects with is called SketchUp. I got interested in it before Google bought it. Google bought it and owned it for about a decade, maybe more, and then they sold it on to another company. So yeah, I've been using it for a while, and obviously you get better with time, and there's always more to learn. But computers were not quite as advanced then as they are now, and they're not as advanced now as they will be in a year. So just keep
right.
Each time you upgrade your computer, you realize, oh, there's other capabilities, there's stuff I could be doing now that I wasn't doing until now, and it's always a balance of money versus power.
Right. Well, I'm sure. Yeah, from a technical side, I'm sure a lot of the work is very, like you're pushing all the graphics, all the, you can pushing your computers to the limits, demanding a lot out of them.
I always find that when there's reviews of the newest, latest hardware, and they're like, no one would ever need to spend $1,500 on a GPU unless you're doing something crazy like video editing or 3D rendering. Like, oh man, there we go. And then I don't spend $1,500 because that's just crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that you mentioned that I'm going to pick up on, which is wonderful, but it's interesting that like you were looking for a parnasa, you're looking for a way to support your family, and this creative endeavor seemed to be a way to support the family. Most creatives don't come at their creativity from that angle. So I don't know if you sold out before you began, or
I never bought in.
You never bought in.
Maybe that's part of the whole the being on the edge of technical and artistic, is that I don't believe in the starving artist as an ideal, and I've seen this as I'm quite a practical person, as well as the the creative side of things. So things have to make sense in order for them. Also, my father is a rav, and I grew up with a very halacha background and a technical background, and we're very practical people as well as um, you know enjoying the academics. So there is definitely that mixture. Um, but yeah, things have to make sense, and I have to be able to pay bills. Otherwise, I can't do any of this. So, um, and I don't
So
feel
how
like
is
I'm
it? I
missing
mean,
out.
maybe you're the wrong person to answer this, but how is it that there is this idea of the starving artist that, you're saying if it's not going to be paid for in some form or other, then you're simply not going to do it because, so what is it about artists that they'll do it no matter what? It's so necessary for them to do whatever it is, their craft, that they can't, that they're doing it, and if they can find someone to pay for it, great. And if not, they're just going to do it anyway. And, or I don't know. It's just an interesting
Yeah,
perspective.
like you said, I might not be the best person to ask that. Uh, Something it does remind me though is there's a Hayom that says that someone who could be carving pearls and instead is spends his day baking bread is I forgot the exact phrase, but he's missing out. And
Right. Doing you
that sounds
disservice.
simple. That sounded simple until I had to start making choices of how do I spend my time. And how do you define which one is carving pearls and which one is baking bread? There's lots of different things each of us could be doing with our time, and you have to figure out
Right.
what's the best use of my time. It's a tougher question than it sounds, I think. I'm not sure if that answers your
Yeah.
question though.
Yeah. No, no, it's food for thought. That artists, I mean, people, start out of passion rather than out of practicality. But they're definitely, in the creative industry, if you're going to talk, look across, industry, that the creative works are there's, there's so much money to be made, if we can want to put it that way, or there's so much money being spent on creativity. I mean, you just look at advertising and billboards and movies and websites, and there's a lot of design. There's a lot of money to be made. So yeah, you don't have to necessarily start off as, okay, I'm willing to settle for as long as I can create my craft.
Yeah. Um, there's many different things that I would enjoy. I am passionate about this, but there's also other things that I enjoy, and there's probably things that I enjoy that might make more money as well. But there's definitely things that I would enjoy doing, but I couldn't figure out a way to monetize them. And between the various things, you choose the one that has to make the most sense on as many fronts as you can. And this seemed to fit the
Right.
bill.
So I know my experience with you and with rendering. And again, I forget who introduced us or what was our first project. But again, this wonderful menorah behind me. Um, I came to you. I don't even remember. I came to you with a sketch, an idea. I mean, I had this idea of the intersecting lines, which to me is about two people when they come together create a third set of energy, that all those intersections in the menorah. But I came to you with a sketch, a concept, a design, and through many iterations. First, we started with a 20 foot and a 10 foot and this and that, and um, I forgot what I was saying. Your design, the process, the technical process, maybe the renderings and how you bring them to life.
So I think that would be on the idea of so I think this idea that you were asking before about the technical and the artistic, even in this menorah design, we knew we wanted to do a cool menorah in a very different look to the classic one, and we went through many different sketches and we went through many different designs, and even from this, and each time we whittled it down a bit further from a sketch from. I'm sure you went through ideas before you came to me, and then in our rendering or in our graphics, we tried out different things, and then the ones that you actually build for real are the ones that have to be buildable, they have to be transportable, they have to be whatever the parameters are in order for a menorah to be to actually exist. And I this one we kept iterating on different designs and trying it out, um, different colors, different shapes, different layouts. We went quite strong into the design until someone figured out the idea of turning them from flat size to the diamond shapes. That really that turned the idea on its head, no pun intended. And we're working on other ideas as well. Oh, is that a spoiler alert? uh,
We are working on some very big menorahs that may or may not come to the world in time for this Hanukkah. So we're working for a client. So for now, we'll keep it under wraps. But yes, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm like all your clients, or people come to you with they have a clear idea of what they want, or they're open ended about what they want.
mm.
Um, who are most of your clients? What kind of other than loopy artists like me, what kind of renderings do you generally do? Do you generally work with?
So the majority of what I do is actually architectural rendering, right? Which I call photography for places that don't exist. Whereas with you, it's photography for objects that don't exist, and it's not just
Right.
photography, but it's also helping with the design. So yes, most projects are slightly different. Why in most projects I start with blueprints of a building, and we work from there to create renders, which is kind of like the goal is to make it look like a picture of the room before the room exists. Um,
Right.
and so that's interior renderings as well as exterior renderings, which is a picture of the building before the building exists. Um, and I've done everything from sometimes, so depending on the client, sometimes they'll have a blueprint, they'll have an interior designer, they'll have all the specs already drawn up, and it's just about putting the pieces together. Um, the designer has already picked out all the finishes and all the furnishing and all of the things that are going to go into it, but it's just as a mood board, and then I put it together as an image. Um, Other times I've gone the opposite extreme. Is I did a project not too long ago where all I had was the address, and I went on Google Maps to take the measurements of how big the building is, and then design everything from there. Sometimes I'll bring in a professional interior designer to help me with coming up with designs. Other times I'll just do it myself. So it really just depends on the project, depends on the scope, depends what the client has already and how much time we have. When I get a call on Monday and they tell me that they have a meeting on Wednesday of the same week and where they need to be presenting a render for a major client, for a major donor, there's less time to get involved in the details. Sometimes we have more time available and we'll work on it more. A lot of my clients are shlochim, working on new buildings or mikveh or different projects like that, as well as working with designers and architects and and other people, and occasionally a few artists who do cool stuff like this.
So, I mean, that's quite a gamut. I mean, it really is interesting that, on one side, it's as we're saying that the technical, okay, here are the blueprints, here is everything, and just put things in the right places. And then other times you're saying that all they gave you was an address, which required, a lot more creativity on your end. Um, yeah, I think about it from a Kabbalistic, Chassidic perspective. The word Chabad, the name Chabad, is made up of three Hebrew words: is Chachma, Bina, and Das, which is translated as wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Which is, I mean, they're all kind of those English words are synonymous with each other, really. But the way I understand it is Chachma is the creative process, that flash of lightning, that flash of an idea. And Bina is developing and fleshing out that idea. Das is about, the emotional relationship to it or the personal relationship to it. So how much, how much of what you do, and I suppose it varies. So it seems like you're doing all of it. But how much is chachma? How much is coming up with the ideas? How much is bina? Is fleshing out? Is bringing someone else's idea to life? And while I'm at it, what about Das? Is it all just work for clients? Is it all just work for hire, as we're saying earlier, or are any of these like touched you? That has a real Das to it, has a real emotional connection.
It's a good question. When I'm doing a personal project, then I often find that those are the ones where all three stages are my own. Then all three stages are my own. So when I have the idea and then I develop it, and that develops the personal connection to it. When I am working with someone, then depending on how much of the input I have already is how much is. I mean, yeah, really, yeah. If I'm working for a client, every project is different. Some I get more excited about. Some I'm doing this thing. I think every project, even as you're developing it, you have to come up. It's not a linear process of chachma and then bina and then das. You kind of keep looping back around, because you come up with a problem and then you have to problem solve. How do I get around this issue? And then you're back in the world of chachma to come up with a creative idea and then implement that. So even when I'm being given all of the material, all the resources from the client, I still end up with having to problem solve in each project, and there's some creativity that goes into each one. So probably mostly on the bina side of things, mostly on the developing an existing idea, but there definitely is there's some chachma involved in there as well. I used to suffer from insomnia a lot, and Friday nights, especially when you have no devices, you have nothing. So one solution is have 3 kids. They'll keep you busy enough.
They'll keep you up at night.
But also, so I used to have Friday night would be my daydreaming in the evening, and coming up with ideas. Right. And then Motzei Shabbos would be like trying to put that out there. So that's where a lot of the most creative ideas have been from just being stuck in bed for 2 hours, not being able to sleep, and then something comes up, and sometimes those end up with I'm able to bring those an idea that I've had on my own, to bring that into a client project as well, and they don't know where it came from, but it's just like it's been on my mind for weeks, and I finally can put it in. And I think that's happened with some of our projects as well that we've worked on, that ideas that we've had from before, stick them in there.
Well, it's wonderful that you get to play to your strengths, but it's you're not limited to, we'll call it bina, to the middle stage of just implementing someone else's vision. You're not just it's not data entry, 3-dimensional data entry. It actually requires you to think, to feel, to connect, on all 3 stages of that set of creativity. Yeah. And I suppose you don't really start with a blank canvas. There's always something, you're getting context. Some people get a little intimidated by a blank canvas, and just like so much open-ended potential is just too open-ended in too many ways. So having a roadmap, having something to set a direction is different.
Yeah. I usually, if you start with the broadest ideas and then work your way in, I often start a project overwhelmed by, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And all I have is room dimensions, let's say. And I want to do a classroom in here. And then, okay, fine. And then you start adding in pieces, and you, bit by bit, and then it ends up as something that hopefully looks great and original. Not always, but often you go from macro to micro. You work your way through.
Yeah, so there's a lot of a lot of technical, designing a classroom now. It's not just about moving pixels, but it's about understanding, interior design concepts in order to be able to, you know, use the software to be able to create. There's a lot of layers, a lot of technical.
Yep.
Um, I have a conversation with a friend, an ongoing conversation about details. Do details matter? Both within Judaism and then beyond. Then it's a back and forth, but on one hand, of course, details matter. Every little detail. Without you missing pixels, you're missing pixels. You're missing details. It's the details that matter. It's you know you need those welds to be strong in order to hold things up, and But the other side is that all those details need to come together to create an emotion that for the viewer, for the whoever it is. But at the end, the interior designer, like, you want to create a space that people feel something,
Mm.
and so it's about the feeling. And so, yeah, it could be this detail, it could be that detail. You could swap something out for something else. It's not that the detail, do the details matter to the same degree? So is it about the details, which is the process, or is it the emotion at the end, the hopeful eventual emotion at the end, which is the product, and that interplay between the two.
I think the which details you choose doesn't matter as much as that there are details. If you if you
Yeah,
walk in my world, if I left out all the detail, it would look empty. But you wouldn't necessarily place your finger on why it looks wrong, but it would just feel wrong. If I put in the
right.
details, are there 15 different options and I just picked one randomly? Sometimes, but it still makes a difference. It fills in the space. So, um, you know, and that would be
No,
the
for
same
sure.
on
I
on
mean,
in Judaism as well. You have to which hachlach do you take on this week, this month? Which resolution what you want to add in this month over what I was doing last month? So each month it could be different, but the difference between someone who is growing and someone who isn't growing is much isn't about what are they growing into this week. It's are they in the right direction and are they moving in that way? Maybe.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. The details, a whole lot of them. So rendering is just one of the hats that you wear. Apparently, you wear a few different other hats, both within the creative sphere. Tell us a little bit about some of your other creative endeavors.
So for a couple of years, we were working on Torah VR, which is still an active project, a very cool project where we've built the model of the Beis Hamikdash in real world scale. And there's lessons based on the Yadus curriculum. So we're taking lessons about Karbonos and lessons about service in the Beis Hamikdash. By the way, are we temple or Beis Hamikdash? What's the crowd? Uh,
I, I'm trying to keep this to, I don't know who's listening, a
okay,
wider audience.
okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Bet
So
Hamikdash, yeah, the temple, the original temple in Jerusalem.
yeah, so I've been working on. I so I worked for a while at Torah VR, where we were turning the lessons in Judaism into a VR experience. We started by modeling the Second Temple in Jerusalem. So it's a building that no one's seen in 2,000 years, and we have lots of Talmudic references of their descriptions of what the place looked like and how big it was. But and lots of the academic discussion about things. And then turning it into VR meant building it in one-to-one scale virtually and being able to walk around the space and all sorts of things that came up there where the rabbis who were studying this as a concept versus as you're actually like walking around the space. It's a space that no one has walked in 2,000 years, and as you're walking around the space, you have to physically be able to fit things in the room. How did this thing happen? How did they reach there? All of these things start making more sense, and you answer many questions, and then you come up with more questions of the practicalities of the temples. That was a big one, and that's still an ongoing thing. That's Torah VR.
So within that, I mean, that's fascinating, and really visualizing. Like we've all, we read about it in the books. We learn about it, but to not just and there are paintings, but to visualize it, to really be able to walk through each room, each wall, see. Um, I'm sure for the rabbis themselves, what has been some of the? Have you had some of your, you know, some rabbis come and see and experience the VR, and has it changed their perspective of what they're learning in any way?
One of the biggest things that we had, we spent a long time trying to figure out the lighting of the temple menorah, and we're just coming up towards Hanukkah and lighting the menorah. So we spent a long time on researching the temple menorah and how it says that there were steps leading up to the candelabra, and we have dimensions for each of them. And when we went to a motion capture studio to actually film someone to record the movements of someone lighting the menorah. And as we did that, we realized that practically he would have to be leaning the priest would have to be leaning all the way over and very impractical. And we tried to come up with different designs. I did speak with a couple of rabbis about how do we decide who's right when there are different opinions in Talmud or in later commentaries about things. Whereas in practical Jewish law, in how to keep kosher, how to keep Shabbos, there's a much more accepted tradition of, when these two rabbis disagree, follow this one. But over here, because it isn't practical on a day-to-day basis until, we pray for the third temple to be rebuilt, but until then, these are all abstract concepts. So there was a lot of there's less of a tradition of how to pick and choose between the various opinions. And the guidance we got was to go with what makes the most sense and what looks the nicest. So things have to make sense practically, and then second into that is the aesthetics of it. So yeah, that's kind of
There's
how
not like some things you can click this slider, to see it with this opinion, see it with that opinion,
we
or
would
you can
love
just
to
go to
do that.
redo the whole thing over with a second
We,
opinion.
we would love to do
Um,
that as an option where you can see the same thing in different ways, but that's a lot of work to build that. And some rabbis were of the opinion that we should be consistent, pick one opinion and one rabbi and follow his opinion all the way through. But yeah, the guidance that we followed was to use our own judgment on these things,
I
which
like
was a
the
heavy
poetic license in
responsibility.
there.
Yeah, it's a heavy responsibility, but it was
Right.
it freed things up a lot. So
What's the response to those who have experienced?
it's it, we've had over 20,000 people spend time in the temple, uh, which is still crazy to me. It might be higher by now. I haven't heard the latest figures, but it's it's both as a traveling exhibit where I'll fly out a team to a school or to a community and put everyone in VR for about 20 minutes or so. That's one option, as well as it's now in about 30 schools, I believe, where they have a whole bunch of headsets and the kids can try it out every week, or they can, and we have lessons in there. So there's an ongoing education rather than just a one-off. The response has been tremendous. Everyone who's been in VR, who's been in these things, it's hard to describe to people what it's like being in VR, and it's hard to show them without actually giving them a headset. The only way to describe it is by putting a headset on someone's head, which is a blessing and a curse in terms of marketing because it's so transformative. But unless you're in there, it's hard for me to just tell you and for you to know that. Which actually, for a long time we were only going to schools or only with institutions, and actually this week I believe they're launching a consumer version of things. That if you own your own headset, you'll be able to buy
Oh,
Torah
wow.
VR, or to buy a headset directly from them. If you're buying a headset from them, then it's fully kosher, and we've gone through a heavy filtering process so that it's safe to give to kids, and that's just actually launching now, so that people who want it for Hanukkah or who want it for home, they'll
Oh,
be able to do
wonderful.
that. Yeah, yeah. And then on my end, I've been using that knowledge of VR and of rendering and trying to bring those together into architectural VR, so that if someone wants to is building a new building, or they're or renovating their house, um, so using the latest tech to be able to visualize the space and not just see it in VR sitting down, but you could walk around. So if we have a big enough, use a gym or something, use a big room, and you could walk around your building before it existed, walk around your house. We're using AR to be augmented reality, to put on a headset, and you could see, if I put the couch here, is it going to feel cramped to have also a coffee table, or what size coffee table can I fit next to here?
Oh,
So
wow.
using AR, augmented reality, and there's VR, QR, QR codes in VR using AR. There's lots of R's over there, and that's why Raskin is the perfect one. So, so we've been looking at that as well, seeing other uses of the technology.
So it's all fascinating. It's wonderful, and it's exciting to be, to have these tools and to know what to do with these tools and to have, a way to use the tools. Some people, you get these tools, but you don't know what, use case, or how to find a way to implement them. Other than all these tools being tools, I mean, in your understanding, in your experiences, I mean, what would you say is the intersection between Judaism and creativity? Like, are these just tools to use to to get where I want to go, or your relationship between Judaism and creativity
Hmm.
in your processes?
I mean, even as tools, the Baal Shem Tov famously said that everything a Jew sees and hears is a lesson in Torah, his Judaism. And I always wonder about that, especially now that I live in a sleepy town of 30,000 people in Wyoming. How many people did he see every day? How many things did he see? Because to learn a lesson from everything you see and hear, um, in a village where there were a few hundred people, and it's the same people every day. Whereas if I scroll through my phone, within a minute, I've seen 100 different things. So I'm not sure where that applies, but in the but every tool of the creative tools are ways. I think we have a responsibility. Those who have the creative ability to use those abilities for good and for Judaism and um, for positive things and to influence others. Exactly how we do that, each of us has to figure out our own way and our own path of how we can best use the abilities that we have, um, and the technology that we have, and the talents that we have, the skills to what's the best use of everything I have. Um, yeah, I'm not sure that I have that's answered your question though.
No, that is a very healthy way to look at it. That yes, if you have skills, if you have a gift, you need to use it. Um, but maybe to extend that is if you have tools and you know how to use the tools, as you're saying, cutting diamonds, earlier instead of baking bread. But you need the tools to cut diamonds. You need diamond cutting tools. You need, the infrastructure. So yeah, if you have these tools at your disposal, or you're educating yourself about, all these tools, then the use case for them is so much greater, and the impact that you can create with them
Hmm.
becomes greater.
Yeah.
And then with that is the responsibility of it. Um, So yeah, that's all very exciting, very interesting. Um,
Tell you another project I'm working on, or
yeah, please go ahead, share.
uh, so another project I've been working on recently is together with another few people. Um, I work with a lot of shluchim, who are a lot of rabbis in communities all over the place, and particularly as they're starting their process of putting up a new building. So it's a major project, and for many people, most people don't get involved in construction unless their career is in construction. So if you're a developer, then that's all you do all day, every day. You have the tools for construction. If you're a rabbi, though, you probably don't have too much of a background in construction, and you're also, especially for Chabad rabbis who are all over the place, they might not have local uh, skilled craftsmen who have done this kind of project before. So it's very much each project is its own thing. Everyone's working from scratch, and so we've been working on a guidebook, to be able to, and a help desk to be able to share the knowledge between people, so that everyone, we don't have everyone reinventing the wheel, and they could all kind of share resources and share recommendations of who is good and share ideas of different things, educate people about the process so that people know what to expect. And so that's been another major project that I've recently gotten involved with. We launched to the public by the Kinus. So there was the annual conference of Chabad rabbis, was that recently. Tremendous response there. People very excited about the project, and so thank God we have advertisers are excited, like the vendors are excited, the clients are excited, and so we're hoping that this will be very helpful to many people. So that's another big one here.
That's yeah, that's a wonderful, again, using the tools that you have, the resources, and that, instead of getting people to reinvent the wheel, you keep working with, rabbis who need renderings, but they need all these other things. Um, Again, the Bina, bringing the existing pieces, and it may or may not be, the most, it's creativity, but it's the different side of creativity. It's not necessarily, oils and paints and all the fun of just free, creativity, but it's a wonderful resource, using, again, the skills and tools that you have.
Yeah, yeah. The oil and paint doesn't speak to me like that explosion of creativity. It's a different head. Uh, and
Good, good.
and
Now
I'm okay with that. I've made peace with it.
we need you exactly where you are, exactly doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. Same.
So
We
Yaakov,
need you
there's one
doing what you're
scripted
doing.
question. Ah, thank God, thank God. One scripted question we have to finish off each episode is, what's your advice for young creatives, for them to find their orange socks, for them to find their creativity? And I suppose we're talking not about oils and paints, but kind of in the direction, in the creativity that you play in.
I think look for opportunities. There's lots of different things that we each could be doing, and how do you figure out what to do now? One of the ways that the step the and which stepping stones along the way are going to take me to where I need to be. And I've been for myself, I've been blessed with various things that have come up along the way, and trying to jump on different opportunities as they come, including like this podcast was something that was definitely not on my radar as something to do. Uh, I know that you had a podcast, and I enjoyed listening to previous episodes, but it wasn't on my radar as
You
something to do. And
you
I,
were on my list. You definitely were on my
uh,
list.
uh, but it came up as an idea, and I figured I'll try it. If this is an opportunity, then let's go for it. And maybe something will come out for this. Maybe not. We'll find out. So taking the opportunities as they come. Maybe people will call you a sellout, but that's fine. Uh, I mean, that's cool. If my feeling on it is that it doesn't bother me to be considered a sellout. If anyone does consider me that way, it doesn't It doesn't bother me. Um, if if that's something that is going to break your heart to be called that, then maybe this isn't the opportunities that will pay well aren't the right ones for you. I don't know. You have to figure that on your own. But the opportunities that do come up and do somewhat make sense, go for them and see where that leads you. That's
Right. Right. 100. Yep. Thank you. I think, what is it? Luck favors the prepared, or something like that. So yeah, open every door, even the virtual ones, and
yeah.
see where it all leads you. Well, Yakov, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and enjoy this menorah. And please God, soon we'll get you, in front of one of these real menorahs. You'll see it in the flesh and blood.
I'm looking forward. This
All
is really
right.
nice. Good enough.
Thank you. Thank you
Good
very
evening.
much.
היום נעשה משהו בלתי נשכח